You've been lied to about goals. And the irony is, you believed it willingly, desperately even, because the lie came wrapped in motivation, productivity, and the promise of becoming someone better. But here's the truth that no one wants to tell you: your goals are killing your power. Every vision board, every 5-year plan, every carefully articulated objective you've set for yourself is a quiet confession of weakness, a public announcement that you don't understand how power actually moves through the world. Machiavelli knew this. He watched men with grand ambitions crumble while others, who operated by different principles entirely, rose to positions of absolute dominance. And what separated them wasn't talent, wasn't luck, wasn't even ruthlessness. It was something far more fundamental. They understood that declaring a destination is the fastest way to ensure you never arrive. Think about what happens the moment you set a goal. You create a gap, a chasm between where you are and where you want to be. And in that gap, something insidious grows: anxiety, self-judgment, the constant measurement of your inadequacy. You wake up every day, and the first thing your mind does is calculate the distance between current reality and desired outcome. You are not living, you are auditing. And worse, you've made yourself predictable. Anyone can see what you want now. Your goal is a map to your vulnerabilities, a blueprint of where to apply pressure if someone wanted to stop you. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince never reveals his true intentions until the moment of action. Yet here you are, posting your goals on Instagram, sharing your dreams in conversations, making yourself transparent in a world that rewards opacity. But there's something even more dangerous happening beneath the surface, something we haven't even touched yet. When you focus on goals, you fundamentally misunderstand the nature of reality. You believe the world is static, waiting for you to impose your will upon it. This is the mindset of someone who has never held real power. The world is not a canvas waiting for your brushstrokes. It's a living, breathing organism of forces, interests, and chaos. It doesn't care about your timeline. Setting a goal is like trying to navigate a storm by staring at a map drawn when the weather was calm. By the time you arrive at the coordinates, everything has shifted. The opportunity has moved. The landscape has transformed. And you, rigid in your commitment to a predetermined outcome, have become irrelevant. Machiavelli understood this intimately because he lived it. He watched the Medici family, the Borgias, the French invasions. He saw that the men who won were not those with the clearest goals, but those with the sharpest awareness. They didn't ask, "What do I want to achieve?" They asked, "What is actually happening right now, and how can I position myself to exploit it?" This is the difference between strategy and fantasy. A goal is a fantasy dressed in determination. Strategy is reality observed with cold precision and acted upon with flexibility. When Cesare Borgia moved through Italy, he didn't have a goal to conquer specific territories. He had a method. He assessed power vacuums, exploited divided loyalties, struck when conditions were favorable, and retreated when they weren't. His power came not from knowing where he wanted to end up, but from knowing how to read the room in real time. Now, you might be thinking this sounds cynical, manipulative even. Good. That discomfort you're feeling is the sound of your conditioning cracking. You've been taught that having goals makes you disciplined, focused, admirable. But discipline toward what? Focus on what? If your goal is arbitrary, then your discipline is just elaborate self-delusion. And most goals are arbitrary. You didn't choose them from a place of deep self-knowledge. You chose them because they sounded impressive, because society validated them, because you saw someone else achieve them, and you thought, if I achieve that too, then I'll finally be enough. Your goals are not yours. They're borrowed desires, culturally installed ambitions that keep you running on a treadmill while others are playing an entirely different game. Here's what Machiavelli would do instead. He would cultivate capacities, not destinations. He would build systems, not targets. Instead of saying, I want to make $1 million, he would ask, how do I become the kind of person who recognizes and creates valuable exchanges? Instead of saying, I want to be respected, he would ask, what skills and knowledge make respect inevitable? Do you see the difference? One is outcome, dependent, fragile, and hostage to circumstances beyond your control. The other is process, oriented, anti-fragile, and entirely within your domain of power. When you focus on capacity, every action compounds. When you focus on goals, every action is judged by whether it brought you closer to a fixed point that might not even matter by the time you reach it. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. Goals make you a slave to future validation. Every moment of your present life is sacrificed at the altar of a future that doesn't exist. You tell yourself, once I achieve this, then I'll be happy, then I'll be confident, then I'll be free. But that moment never comes, does it? Because the goal was never really about the achievement. It was about avoiding the confrontation with who you are right now. The goal is a distraction, an elaborate procrastination technique that lets you defer the real work, which is becoming someone who doesn't need external validation to feel powerful. Machiavelli watched men destroy themselves, chasing titles, land, legacy, and the ones who succeeded in getting what they wanted often found that the achievement was hollow because they had never developed an internal sense of worth independent of external markers. This is where most people break. They realize their goal was empty, so they set another one, and another. They become goal addicts, constantly chasing the next hit of accomplishment, because the last one didn't deliver the transformation they expected. But the problem was never the specific goal. The problem was the framework itself. You cannot reach a destination inside yourself by accumulating things outside yourself. Power, real power, the kind that cannot be taken from you, comes from presence, competence, and understanding. And none of those things are destinations. They are practices. They are ways of being that deepen over time, not boxes to check off. So what does Machiavelli's method actually look like in practice? First, you stop announcing intentions. Silence becomes strategic. When you talk about what you're going to do, you leak energy. You invite judgment, skepticism, and interference. Worse, you trigger your own brain's reward system prematurely. Studies show that when you tell someone your goal, your brain experiences a satisfaction similar to having achieved it. You get the dopamine hit without doing the work. You become someone who talks about doing things instead of someone who does things. Machiavelli operated in shadows, not because he was cowardly, but because shadows are where power moves most efficiently. Let your actions speak. Let results be the only announcement. Second, you become obsessed with positioning, not with endpoints, but with position. In chess, amateurs focus on capturing pieces. Masters focus on controlling the center of the board. Controlling position means you have options. It means that when opportunity emerges, and it always emerges unexpectedly, you are already in place to seize it. How do you build position? You develop skills that compound. You build relationships based on value exchange, not transactional need. You study systems until you understand their leverage points. You stay liquid, financially and psychologically, so you can move when others are frozen. This is how power accumulates. Not through goals, but through strategic positioning that makes luck inevitable. Third, you embrace the concept of directional living instead of destinational living. You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You need to know which direction is generative and which is degenerative. Move toward competence, away from comfort. Move toward truth, away from delusion. Move toward people who make you sharper, away from people who enable your weaknesses. A direction is forgiving. You can adjust. You can course correct. A goal is rigid. Miss it by an inch and you feel like a failure, even if you're in a far better position than when you started. Direction allows for serendipity. Goals strangle it. But there is still one more layer we need to peel back. One more uncomfortable truth about why goals fail and why you've been conditioned to believe in them anyway. Goals serve the system, not you. Think about it. A population obsessed with goals is a population that is easy to control. You're all chasing the same validated markers of success: the degree, the title, the salary, the house, the followers. Which means you're all competing in the same narrow lanes, driving up the cost of entry and driving down the uniqueness of your contribution. You're replaceable. And when you're replaceable, you have no leverage. The system loves goal-oriented people because they're predictable. They'll sacrifice their health, their relationships, their integrity to hit a number that someone else decided was important. They'll stay in jobs they hate because quitting would mean abandoning the goal. They'll avoid risks because failure would mean not reaching the goal. They become domesticated, neutered versions of what they could have been. Machiavelli would look at this and laugh. He wrote The Prince not as a manual for tyrants, though it's been read that way, but as a mirror showing how power actually operates versus how we pretend it operates. And one of his central insights is this: the person who adapts fastest wins. Not the strongest, not the smartest, the most adaptable. And goals, by their very nature, kill adaptability. They lock you into a course of action based on old information, old desires, old versions of yourself. Meanwhile, the world is changing. You are changing. But you can't see it because you're staring at a fixed point on the horizon, convinced that reaching it will solve everything. So here's what you do instead. You build what I'll call adaptive dominance. You become someone who is always building capacity, always improving positioning, always moving in generative directions, but never attached to a specific outcome. This is terrifying for most people because it requires you to be comfortable with uncertainty. You don't get the false comfort of a clear finish line, but you get something better. You get power, real power, the power that comes from prepared for opportunities you couldn't have predicted, the power that comes from being skilled enough that value finds you instead of you chasing it, the power that comes from being internally grounded enough that external circumstances don't destabilize you. Consider this. Every person you admire who seems to have an almost supernatural ability to succeed, look closer at their path. It's never linear. It's never a straight line from goal to achievement. It's a series of pivots, adaptations, and intelligent responses to emerging conditions. Steve Jobs didn't have a goal to create the iPhone when he started Apple. He had a direction: make tools that empower human creativity. The specific manifestation of that direction changed radically over decades, but the direction remained consistent. Elon Musk doesn't set goals in the traditional sense. He sets impossible visions, yes, but his actual operating method is iterative, experimental, and highly responsive to feedback. He's building capacity and positioning constantly, and letting specific outcomes emerge from that process. But there is a final, most dangerous truth we need to confront before we close this loop. The reason you cling to goals isn't because they work. It's because they protect you from the void. The void is the space of not knowing, of uncertainty, of having to sit with the question, who am I when I'm not chasing something? Most people cannot tolerate that question, so they set another goal and another, using ambition as armor against existential discomfort. But here's the paradox. The void is where power lives. The void is where creativity emerges. The void is where you meet the raw, unfiltered version of yourself that isn't performing for future validation. And that version of you, that's who you actually are. That's who has the capacity for real power. Machiavelli spent years in exile, stripped of position, wealth, and influence. In that void, he wrote the works that made him immortal. He didn't set a goal to write a great book. He processed reality, distilled insight, and let the work emerge. The goal-oriented person would have spent those years bitter, focused on getting back what was lost. Machiavelli used that time to become someone whose ideas would outlive empires. That's the difference. That's always the difference. The weak need goals because goals give them permission to act. The powerful act from capacity, and capacity doesn't need permission, so delete your goals. All of them. Stop tracking arbitrary metrics that some guru told you would make you successful. Stop measuring your worth by proximity to a finish line that keeps moving. Instead, ask yourself, what capacities do I need to build? What position do I need to occupy? What direction is generative? And then move, not toward a destination, but into becoming. Every day, you're either building power or dissipating it. Every action either increases your optionality or constrains it. Every choice either makes you more adaptable or more brittle. This is the game. This is the only game that matters. And the beautiful, terrifying truth is that once you understand this, once you truly internalize that power comes from who you are, not what you achieve, you become unstoppable. Not because you're guaranteed success, but because success and failure become irrelevant categories. You're playing a different game entirely. The world is full of people chasing goals, exhausted, anxious, and perpetually disappointed. And then there are the few who understand what Machiavelli understood, what every person who has ever held real power understood. You don't achieve power through goals. You embody it through practice. You don't reach success as a destination. You generate it as a natural byproduct of who you've become. So the question isn't, what do you want to achieve? The question is, who are you becoming, and is that person capable of navigating reality as it actually is? Answer that honestly, and you'll understand why everything you've been taught about goals is a beautiful, seductive, and ultimately disempowering lie. You've been lied to about goals, and the irony is, you believe